Hello, everyone. Daniel here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, I'll be doing a review for Gotchaman #1. This is the new book from Mad Cave Studios. Really cool stuff. Let's talk about the creative team before we get into this actual issue. This is written by Cullen Bunn with art by Carlos Lopez. With art by Chris Batista, colors by Carlos Lopez, and letters by Buddy Bodine. Uh, so interestingly enough, I remember very vividly watching the Gotchaman cartoon when I was younger. Um, Really quick, let me give you an overall synopsis of what this is. So, Science Ninja Team Gotchaman, or Gotchaman as it was brought over to the US, is a Japanese animated franchise about five-member superhero ninja team created by Tatsuya Yoshida and produced by Tatsukono Productions. The original anime debuted in '72 and was then brought in as Gatchaman, better known in the English speaking world as Battle of the Planets. The series had an additional English adaptation with G Force Guardians of Space in '86 and a few more films in 2005. And here we are now, Mad Cave, as they celebrate their 10-year anniversary, bringing a lot of these franchises back to life, back to the comics, or back into the comics. So this is really fun. But let's talk about this specific issue, the triumphant return of Gatchaman, the iconic Japanese animated franchise of a five-member birth themed superhero known to the Western audiences as Battle of the Planets. A mechanical terror has descended upon numerous cities to the world, and the greatest scientists are disappearing. Our only hope, Science Ninja Team Gatchaman, as they battle these machinations from the international terrorist organization known as Galactor. Their strength, willpower, and even vehicles are pushed to the absolute limit. If they fail, who's waiting in the wings to take their place? The first exciting issue in an ongoing series that expands upon the original anime series. So that's what really drew me into this. I mean, other than the talent behind this, like I'm a big fan of Cullen Bunn. I've been reading his books since I can remember, really, since I got into comic books over 10 years ago. Uh, so so there's two checklists right there already, right? Two items of the checklist. We have a writer that I really like. We have a property that I really enjoyed when I was a kid. So yeah, let's talk about it. I really enjoy this. I think the premise of this is interesting because in the cartoon, for the most part, you knew that they were going to be all right. They were not pushing boundaries as far as like, the team. Like, what happens if the team fails? Like, all those things are not usually explored in cartoons, specifically some that are targeted for kids. So yeah, this is really interesting, and so expanding upon that original lore, it's really cool. We're seeing a lot of different adaptations from a lot of publishers about, uh, of course, a lot of these franchises that bring back the nostalgia. So I'm glad that Gatchaman was one of those that got the chance to happen. Let's talk about the art as well. I love how bright and colorful everything is. I think Carlos Lopez is doing a great job with the color palette, and I just think that Chris Batista just drawing some of the most insane stuff you can really have on a comic. Like this ship looks insane. I thought it was a kaiju at first, but then you really start looking at all the details and you see more of the mechanical stuff. This, like I said, the scientists are being kidnapped, and then we get a cool sequence to reintroduce the five members of the Gotchamen, but we also meet the B team. So who is this B team? That's not somebody I had ever heard of in the cartoon, at least that I remember. So who are these? Who is this other team? What is their purpose? And what happens if the G Force squad fails? That's what we're gonna explore in this series, I think. And it looks like they've come with backup. So yeah, really fun story, really interesting premise. So I'm gonna keep checking this out because, like I said, I was a big fan. Even just the costumes are incredible, and of course we have some really cool covers in the back in the video. So stay tuned for that. So next, before we get into all the stuff we've been watching and reading and doing all week, we got a chance to review a new book upcoming from Dark Horse. It is going to be Neil Gaiman's Anansi Boys is getting an adaptation in comic book form. This is a comic from Dark Horse coming out next week, but we got a chance to read it, so we're going to talk a little bit about it. tell you guys, how we felt about it. This is, of course, Story and Words by Neil Gaiman because it's based on his original book. This is a script by Mark Bernardin of Fat Man Beyond fame and many other things. Um, with art by Sean Martinborough and colors by Christopher Sotomayor, letters by Jim Campbell. Now, I wasn't very familiar with Martinborough's art, but I think it really works here.
Oh, it's really good.
Uh, and of course, this beautiful cover by David Mack because once again, David Mack just let him do all the covers.
Exactly, he's so good.
There's there's a lot of stuff going on here. So before we get into it, I was talking to Josh before we started because I told him I wanted to do a little bit of research. As a comics journalist that I am. So the original book was published in 2005, and I also wanted to just do a quick Google as to what Anansi. I was not familiar with the term Anansi.
Is this the book?
All. Yeah, there's the book. Clay has it. So Anansi is Anansi the spider is a popular figure in the folklore of parts of West Africa. Anansi is a trickster figure, clever, cunning, sometimes mischievous, who uses his wits to make up for what he lacks in size and strength. And their stories mainly talk about how he becomes eventually the owner of all stories. So the god of stories. So Loki, you got some competition there.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I looked into was what are Anansi stories, because this is a little bit of what's kind of, it's how this book is kind of made up of, these folk tales. So these stories began in Ghana many years ago, and they are spread by oral tradition when Africans were brought as slaves to the Americas and the Caribbean in the early 1500s. So there's your history moment. Don't say I never read anything for you guys. So I'm gonna start with Josh. What did you think of this book?
I loved it. I was saying before the show, this is one of the few of his novels I've not read. So I kind of went into it completely cold, and I feel like so much of his stuff has been adapted for comics that began as like short stories, novels. I thought this was an absolutely great opening. I have no idea where the story goes, but just the way that this structures the opening kind of immediately grabs you and kind of brings you in and compels you to keep reading is great. I thought the little flashbacks and snippets we get of his dad are amazing. I don't want to spoil anything. I genuinely, and I think this is really hard for a comic to do because it's not dialogue. I genuinely laughed out loud when he was at the wrong funeral. Like I just the way that it was structured and paced was just so well done that when I turned the page and you think the person that he knows walking up is coming to the funeral, and then she's like, "You're at the wrong funeral," and I just burst out laughing. I was like, "Oh shit, this is so bad." It was great. It was really good. The art is good. The writing, the dialogue is good. So yeah.
Before we go to Clay and Jeff, I forget to go over the synopsis, which Josh talking about it. I was like, maybe I should have talked about the synopsis.
Yeah, sorry.
This book follows Fat Charlie Nancy. What a nickname.
Yeah.
Who leads a boring life as a boring Londoner until he discovers two things: that his recently deceased father was, in fact, Anansi the Spider, the trickster god of African folklore, and that he has a twin brother that he's never met, which kicks off a reality-spanning odyssey of sibling rivalry, jealous deities, and one poor soul who realized that he's meant to be a god. So I didn't read any of that. Like I said, I also went into this cold. But let's go with Jeff. Were you familiar with any of this stuff? What did you think of the book?
Yeah, I've never read the book, so I was also not expecting anything, going into it blind. Really enjoyed the comic to the point where I did want to go back and read the book more than almost as much as I wanted to, because the comic hooked me so much that I was just like, I kind of want to keep reading the comic, but also I just kind of want to read the book, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, same.
So I was like, it's a weird thing to be like, oh, I really, I go read this comic, but also I don't know, pick up the book. Also read both of them. The artwork is
Yeah.
fantastic.
Oh, I
It is
love it.
very funny, just like Josh said.
And
And it,
and
and
now
it
that I
really
have
does
the
hook you.
context, now that I have the context of the spider of it all, I'm going back and seeing some of these pages, and I'm like, oh, I'm a dummy. I didn't even put that together.
Same. Not just you, man. Because like I'm actually kind of surprised that synopsis they provide. I feel like ruins a lot of the first issue
Yeah,
and
yeah.
subsequent issues. I would be like, go into it totally cold, like have no idea what you're getting into.
We need a
Um,
like and comment here before. All right, Clay, what about you? What did you think of the book?
Yeah, I went in blind and totally enjoyed it because I didn't know which way it was going to go. But Mark and Neil Gaiman, I mean, the names associated with it, it's going to be good, and it just has this just really great dialogue that Neil Gaiman always does of this couple, where she's trying to convince him about his dad, and he is just telling these heartbreaking stories of just what a terrible dad he was. That's the hard part for me because I don't understand why the necessity for his dad to be there at the wedding, other than her want for it. Because as somebody who did grow up like similar to this guy with his dad, like I wouldn't invite my dad to anything. Like I wouldn't run to his funeral. I'd schedule a podcast. I would do anything but go to that. So that's the hard part for me to accept, is that this guy but maybe he's pursuing that closure.
Yeah, I think she realizes that he will eventually regret not having his dad at the wedding.
Yeah.
And so I think that's obviously, as his fiance, she probably knows him a lot better. So like that's maybe something we haven't really seen in the character. But just the fact that he did get on a plane to jump to go to his funeral does say that there's still a bond there from him, that even if he wants to cast it aside for his everyday life, like it the emotional attachment is still there. I feel like, and this is slight spoilers for the first issue. It's a very brief spoiler. When he talks about the story of his mom passing, I think he's sort of grateful that he kind of gave her those extra years afterwards,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which, what a bombastic scene of the dad showing up in the
Oh,
hospital with a
God, it's
full on
great.
marching band.
Yeah.
I was just like, how did this work? That was one of the clues. I was telling Josh, because we were talking about it before you guys jumped on. I saw that there was something special about the dad. I could tell because of the art. Like Martin Bro
Yes.
actually does a really good job of like I was like, is he not aging? Because he's kind of staying the same all throughout the flashbacks. But I'm like, is that just, I think, as a, when you think back on your parents, and luckily both my parents are still with me, uh, but like you kind of picture them as they are, right? Like I feel like when you think of people that are not around any longer, I feel like you picture them as the thing, like that version of them you remember. So I thought that was just what was happening here. That, and
Oh,
obviously
yeah.
that was not the case, as we found out. So yeah, I think this book is very well done. I was also very excited to like getting. It's rare that I read a number one and I'm like, dang, I need the second one. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
damn.
Yeah.
The,
Same.
the ending is such a hook.
Yeah.
It is.
So, all right. Any other thoughts from you guys on this book? Okay.
We're good.
I did reach out to I went on Blue Sky, because if you want to talk to comic creators, that's sometimes where you have to go. And I messaged Mark Bernard and asking him, oh crap, I just closed the link. So I'm gonna put a link in the description of this video, and then also when we break it out into an individual video, about an interview that he did, because I asked him how it was adapting an existing property, which I'm guessing he's a fan of course. So yeah, you can read all about it there. So he replied with that link. So I think he would be one of the most fun people to like kind of get to talk to. So I'm gonna try to reach out to Dark Horse and see if they
Yeah.
can hook us up, because I think he'd be great. but he is a busy person. So, so, all right. Well, make sure to pick up Anansi Boys. Let me show you some really cool covers to kind of wrap this part up. But so, and then David Mack, I can see the spider now.
Yeah.
Like, I see it now. So, yeah, these are great. I love these covers. Hello, everyone. Daniel here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, we'll be doing a review of Helen of Windhorn #3. This is a new book from Dark Horse. Let's talk about the creative team before we get into this book. This book, of course, written by Tom King with art by Bilquis Evely, colors by Mateos Lopez, and letters by Clem Cowell. We also have a few covers that you'll see, so stay tuned for the end of the video for that. Yeah, we continue to follow the Windhorn family, right? We see Helen, how she has gone and discovered this whole new world with her grandfather. And this one, we really dive deep into what that could mean and how things play out. So, very interesting stuff. I think Tom King and Bilquis Evely are such a great team. I also don't hear people talk enough about Lopez's colors. I think they really bring Bilquis Evely's work to its full potential. Like it makes things look really cool. I mean, you saw that cover. So in this issue, Helen returns to the grounds of the Windhorn House, and from what appears to have been a fantastical warrior paradise, what she has experienced, and is it real or is it from her mind of her late father who penned stories of a barbaric adventurer in a bizarre land? So I think we're still playing a little bit with reality here, but to me, it feels pretty obvious that all these things are really happening. So, but I do like the kind of aspect of there's a comic or a book within a book. There's art within the art. So that's kind of really fun, and I would love to see how the things that are going on in the present timeline, where we had this interview and we know a little bit more about that stuff, how that all goes back and ties into the main timeline where we're following Helen and her adventures, right? So let's take a look at some of the preview art. And gosh, every single issue kicks off with a page that just looks like a painting because they are supposed to be paintings within the world of this book. And oh my goodness, Bilquis Evely, and like I mentioned, I think Lopez's colors just really bringing this to life. But my God, this is just so cool. I would read this book as well, not just Helen of Windhorn, but the actual book within the book. And yeah, we see here that the Windhorn assets are being kind of distributed, but then we jump back to Helen's time, and we see her come back from adventure, very excited, right? She's learning a lot from her grandfather, which I think it's a lot of fun. I think those adventures are really cool. And I think Helen's changed a little bit from the person that we met in issue #1, who was somebody that had very little cares and just kind of was a wild, loose cannon. Even though here she's still searching for a sense of adventure, I think it's a lot more honed in on just like the stuff she's doing with her grandfather. So, and as I mentioned, just like every single panel in this book is absolutely just gorgeous, beautiful. You could pull out any panel, and it'd be amazing. So it just, yeah, I cannot believe the level of detail that Evely's going into this book. But it just really works. It makes the book what it is. It makes the book special. So yeah, highly recommend you check this out. Only 3 issues in. You can kind of go back and catch up if you need to. I think the trade of this is going to be really cool, but it's still going to be a little bit away. So if you're waiting for the trade, it's still going to be probably a few months. Maybe by the end of the year we'll have something. So. Hello everyone, Daniel here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, I'll be doing a review for Animal Pound. This is #4. We have a new issue from Boom Studios. So let's take a look at the creative team before we get into this book. This book is written by Tom King with art by Peter Gross, colors by Tamara Winville, and letters by Clem Cowell. Boy, oh boy, what an issue. Every time I read this book, like honestly, I really enjoy it, but I also get kind of sad because it's a very direct commentary on what's going on with a lot of social issues. So, in this issue, though, Piggy the dog reigns in a dictatorial role, instating a system of brutality and death, a meat grinder of hierarchy that there's no escape from. When two groups of animals work together and try to put a stop to this, will their efforts be enough to prevent Piggy's third term? Yeah, so if you haven't caught up, like, real quick overview of the first three issues. An animal pound was taken over by the animals that reside inside of it, that being dogs, cats, and rabbits, and they've kind of established their own little system of government. And they have a working society, but as the time passes and they choose different people to kind of rule over, or different animals to rule over, things start to change, and it changes in. Sometimes change is not for the best. So um, it's interesting to see like how literally some of these animals are revealing their true nature. And I think this book is really carried, I think, on the work of Peter Gross as well, because of the art has to be so visceral sometimes that just really cutting. It's you have to make animals both kind of look realistic but still emote, right? You have to show their emotion in the face. So yeah, this all really works. So let's take a look at some of the preview art here. As you can see, Piggy has taken down another rabbit, and obviously this is not in a society where you're living all together. You can't just be doing this. Like, you shouldn't, especially if you are like the ruler here. But in this case, Piggy really has no shame as to what he's doing. He's just doing it in front of everyone. And the worst part, I guess, is that a lot of these dogs are following in his lead. Like I said, it's very thinly veiled commentary and a lot of things that are going on. So definitely, if you don't want to get a little bit political, maybe this is not the comic for you. But I do love the conversations between Titan and Fifi. Like, they are kind of the OG rulers as the first and second kind of president of this society. And I just really like to, like I said, you have to make these animals show you what they're thinking with their faces. So, and then we go in back, and as always, these are still animals, right? Cats are going to do cat things, and dogs are going to do dog things, or rabbits are going to rabbit. So, really interesting. And we do get to see a lot of the discourse that this arises between the animals and what the plans are kind of like. In this case, like, the rabbits have it really tough, but they've tried to be impartial to the system, and it's just a very interesting approach. Like I said, I think that this is not a comic for everyone, but if you enjoy the work of Tom King, I think you'll really like this. If you enjoy things like Animal Farm and things, something like that, this is definitely something very similar, at least in the way that it presents things and the themes and everything. So hello everyone, Daniel here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, we'll be doing a review for Lawful #1. This is a new book from Boom Comics or Boom Studios. Very excited to get into this. I had been wanting to talk about it, but just had not had a chance with all the plethora of comics that we're getting. Let's talk about the creative team. This is written by Greg Pak, with art by Diego Galindo, colors by Irma Nivela, and letters by Simon Boland, with a beautiful cover by Christina Khalida. We also have some other variant covers at the end of the video. Stay tuned for that. So, as you guys may or may not know, I'm a big fan of Greg Pak. Like, I've been reading his stuff all the way back since the early or mid 2000s, probably. In this issue, magical meets modern in a walled city with strangely familiar architecture, where two small children with a sense of adventure get a grim reminder of reality. Because every mistake everyone makes in this world will cause them to transform into a monster bit by bit. In the eyes of society, there's no distinction between the rules and what's right. Imperfection breeds monstrous consequences in this urban fantasy adventure with deep social commentary from renowned award winner Greg Pak. And if you haven't read Greg Pak's work, like, you can read things like Mech Cadets, Darth Vader, Planet Hulk, and also we have acclaimed artist Diego Galindo. So yeah, I just thought the premise was really cool. I remember seeing this announced and looking a little bit into it. I saw a few people make TikToks about this, and oh boy, I was so ready. Like, imagine if every little thing you did wrong, whether you meant to or not, causes you to physically change into a monster. And then, of course, if enough of those things happen, then you become a monster. How does society treat you? What does society do to stop things like this from happening? And then what happens if somebody that you care about happens, has this transformation? So just go back and think about your life and all the things you've done wrong. Like I said, whether you meant to or not, and would you be a monster today? I know for sure. And I was talking about this on the live stream because this was my recommendation for the week. I know for sure I would probably be pretty monstrous whether I'm into or not. So, also, I'm not very familiar with Galindo's art. So let's take a look at some of the preview pages. And, we are in the city of New Sanctum and we meet two of our main characters who are friends. This is when they are a little bit younger. One of them, as you can see, already has a tail. So you can tell from the get go, just from the premise, a little mischief has gone afoot. And, if you break the rules, there will be consequences. In this case, a monster came out of the water because you're not supposed to throw rocks down there. And then we also see just the consequences of that as you see here, even if it's just a little bit, he has now been forever kind of marred with these marks and disappointed his family and his father. So it's really interesting. I really like this idea of a society like this. You also see kind of in the background all the people that already have like these monster-ish features, and then you see this, the soldier in front of you, like where he doesn't have any of those features, at least nothing that's visible. So like, it's really interesting. I think the book presents a fun concept and a really fun idea with morality, right and wrong, friendship, and then also like the duty as your family. So yeah, this book dives a lot deeper into those ideas and what people would do to kind of make sure that you don't turn into a monster, right? Even if and then what happens when society itself has deemed you a monster, even if you probably are overall a good person. Very interesting, very cool stuff. I really like this. And then of course, like I said, Greg Pak and Diego Galindo's work like really, really came out into something that was really fun and entertaining for me. So hello everyone, Dan here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, I'll be doing a review for Self-Help #1. This is a new book from Image Comics. I went into this book not really knowing a lot, especially the creative team. So let's talk about the creative team before we get into this. This book is written by Jesse Kellerman with and Owen King, with art by Mariana Ignasi, colors by Fabiano Mascolo, and letters by Ian Charlton. So I'm not so. This book was an interesting ride, like I said, knowing very little about it. But let me give you a quick synopsis for this one. Down on his luck, rideshare driver Jerry Hauser's existence is a bleak one, especially because every fare he picks up tells him how much he looks like this super successful self-help guru, Darren Hart. But after a twist of fate, Jerry's given a chance of a lifetime, which, if he's not careful, he may well end his own lifetime. So begins this California noir, a roll-kicking and gleefully lurid crime story of our time. So this book was very interesting to read. I think the whole mystery of it all, it really plays out in very slow motion as you kind of, it really builds towards the book. And at the time, you're thinking, like, whenever I read this, I really thought that this person, Jerry, was living a double life, or I guess Darren was living a double life as Jerry, just because of the little clues that were there. But no, then you realize that they are two different people, and you get to know a little bit about each of them throughout the issue. And then, of course, maybe their paths eventually cross. And it is this little twist of fate that kind of sets them on the path. So it's a very interesting, especially as you get to the end of the book. But let's take a look at some of the preview art here. And I think one of the things that I appreciate is that The art isn't subtle at all, right? We have Jerry here who's just at a diner. Something really interesting, like we have this person just kind of taking a picture with Jerry out of nowhere, and of course, every time you do something like that, you could end up with kind of a dumb face. You see that his screen is cracked on his phone, right? And he's picking up another fare, and also you see that how little like he's getting paid for some of these things, right? And it's just kind of a hassle, obviously, when you are a rideshare driver, like you really have to pay attention to that. So like it gives you a really good idea of with both the art and what's happening, as to how Jerry's life is maybe not everything that he wanted it to be. Even his car's a little beat up. It's a little bit of an older car, just based on the square. And like I said, people keep kind of telling him, "Oh, you look like this other guy. You look like this other guy." And then we meet Darren, and of course, he has a way better life. But you can kind of tell that they do look very similar. Obviously, they're drawn to be looking very similar. So that's what's going to lead us to all the shenanigans that happen later. So yeah, I thought it was an interesting book. I think it's a very interesting premise. This is something that to me feels like I'll probably wait for the trade just because of my reading habits. A story like this, I also feel like is gonna just like after I read this issue, I really wanted to know what happens next. But obviously, in a monthly comic, I don't have that luxury. So, but overall, I enjoyed Self Help. I think it's a very cool and fun concept, and I expect a lot of twists and turns to come out of this. But yeah, I'll look forward to seeing more work from these creators. Like I said, I'm not very familiar with them. So if you read this book, let me know what you thought about it down in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching, everyone. Remember to share, like, subscribe, hit the bell so you know when we go live. That is most Saturdays, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. Stay tuned. We have more comic reviews, trailer reactions, TV recaps, all that fun stuff here in the channel. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye-bye.